After more than 50 years, is the practice getting easier?
Yeah, the first 50 years were kind of tough, but now it's starting to get better. Yes, no, the practice really changes as you get, and you're thinking it over an arc of quite a long period of time. On a certain level, the difficulty is in the subtlety, in the sense of how do you keep the mind subtle and interested, so that because we can, over time you get used to the practice, you get used to your defilements, you get used to perspectives on Dhamma, and it's easy to. So on a certain level, it requires more mindfulness, but the mindfulness is not inaccessible, and it's actually a delight to be the more you're present, the more you feel good, and things become more and more clear. So, but it does require, it isn't as if, okay, I can, after however many years, I've got this many years practice under my belt, then I can start coasting. It isn't like that. But you enjoy it a lot more. Yeah.
And Paul, we quite frequently here chant the Noble Eightfold Path, the Pali English.
Yes.
Chanting from
You do it here?
A lot, quite a lot.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
They don't do it at Amaravati.
Oh, really?
I've been threatening to do it myself. I introduced a couple others, but...
No, we do it quite frequently. And also we do that in Panasati, Pali English, and the Dhammacakka teachings.
Oh, great, yeah, those are great.
Yeah, I think so too. And so when it comes to experiencing mind as mind, maybe please offer some reflection on mind as mind.
Well, I think one of the things is just the looking at the Satipatthana Sutta, it's looking at content. So that the mind with greed is the mind with greed. The mind without greed is the mind without greed. The mind with hatred is with it. So it's like knowing the content of the mind and just seeing it as that, rather than, because often if you've got a mind with greed, then it immediately goes out to an object and is looking for something. So then just sort of being able to identify. That's because the impulse is so quick, and we get pulled in. That's why that seeing body, feeling, mind, dhammas in and of. I like Ajahn Jeff's translation as in and of themselves. As that, okay, that's what a mind with greed is like. That's what a mind with. So it's like that seeing, rather than getting too ethereal or refined or. And there's certainly the aspects of the qualities of the mind, knowing the expanded mind as the expanded mind, knowing the contracted mind as the contracted mind, knowing the mind that's settled, knowing the mind that's not settled, and being able to sort of, that's just the mind doing what minds do, and what they can do, and what they're capable of, and because they're capable of great clarity and they're capable of great confusion, and just to be able, this is the seeing mind as mind. And then recognizing, underneath that, there is this peaceful quality of mind, but that's sort of more the result of that seeing mind as mind. Is sort of you start recognizing, here's this capacity of the mind to be very clear and aware and alert without it being dependent on getting the object as you prefer.
Mm-hmm. Or getting rid of the...
Or having, got to get rid of it. Because there's so often that's just from more self and becoming to get rid of it, rather than just the quality of knowing. We underestimate the power of that knowing.
Would that relate directly or even partially to Lumpur Dun's reformulation of the Four Noble Truths, where he says the mind seeing the mind?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
That's the way I
absolutely.
absolutely.
But absolutely. But he's taking it to the level of how we can experience the fruits of it. But it's a tool as well. I'm trying to remember the Upasika Gi, an inward staying, unentangled knowing.
Mm-hmm.
That's a really beautiful description of the mind not having to go out to the objects of mind, not getting entangled in the objects of mind, whether the object is peaceful or agitated. Just that there is this capacity of knowing.
But tagging on to that question there, you said, for example, knowing the mind with greed, for instance. And for myself, in my own practice, in daily life, this sounds very much like something I'm trying to do, which is notice the mind with lust or with aversion, and usually I find myself totally absorbed in an object out there. But then if I've got a modicum of mindfulness and like step it back away from the object to bring the craving into view, and then if I can maintain the mindfulness to stay with that craving and just see if I can allow it to pass and witness that. And from my studies and just intuitively from a feeling of a detachment that comes from that, it feels as though that's the right track and there's something to continue with there. But I just wonder if you could speak on that stage of practice.
Yeah, I mean that's yeah, definitely. I mean that's what I say. That's the possibility of when we are able to not get tangled in especially the hindrances are a really good tags or mirrors for because if we don't understand the obstacle, we can't be free from them, and because you can't just impose, somehow, like a liberated mind onto that. It's the access to that place of freedom is really through relinquishment and releasing, as opposed to a gaining or getting or making it happen somehow. And you obviously have got to do something, and we've got plenty of work to do with letting go of those 5 hindrances, or of understanding the potential of pain and difficulty that they bring. So it's and then that releasing into the quality of knowing and seeing clearly, because the possibility is there all the time. And sort of imminent here and now is the nature of, as this when we chant, the nature of the Dhamma all the time. Apparent here and now. Apparent here and now. It's imminent. It's there. If we chose to see it or realize it or experience it. But in the meantime, you've got to be doing, you do something, and just that watchfulness and alertness for, how are the hindrances displayed? I mean, that's a good handle to try to get the handle on the mind. And, that's like Ajahn Chah says, you've got to be really careful because the mind is a liar and a cheat. It's ready to, we're ready to believe it all the time. So it's not taking ourselves too seriously, not taking the mind too seriously, and seeing, there's a way through this. And to a certain degree, it's there's the element of, say, the fruits of our practice, the diligence, and the wisdom and discernment. But there's also the element of faith, because we can get so tangled up in trying to analyze everything, and to be able to have the faith and confidence to recollect, to remember, which is what the sati really. That's the root of the word sati is in that function of memory and recollection, remembering, and so that being reminded of the possibility and of what the Buddha is giving us as an option. Yeah.
What would you recommend to you said about taking it serious, being serious in the mind? How would you what practice would you suggest to?
What was that again?
You mentioned about being serious, also serious with your thinking.
Well, I was going to say taking the hindrances seriously in the sense, okay, this, you can't just sort of whitewash them over. They keep showing up, and so that not overestimating or not overestimating oneself and underestimating the power of our delusion. That's taking it seriously in that sense, and not getting too complacent, and being able to muster up a sense of circumspection and being willing to reflect on our experience. It's one of the qualities that the Buddha points to over and over and over again as integral to the progress on the path, is the quality of being circumspect. Appamada, being careful, is kind of a limp kind of translation. Heedful, being heedful. It's a hard word to translate into English, which, as in, once you start getting to the subtlety of nature of mind, sometimes it's good to get a feel for the Pali terms, because they're kind of, they have layers of meaning that are important to get a feel for. And so this quality of appamada, lack of heedlessness, because pamada is like heedless, careless, lack of circumspection. So there's a careful thoroughness to the way that we're willing to explore our experience. So that's sort of taking it seriously, and not taking ourselves too seriously, because we can really burden ourselves with trying to be serious in our practice as well. It can be, it gets to be hard work when we're doing that, is carrying this burden. You realize, well, no, the whole purpose of the path is freedom from suffering. So we don't have to, there's no extra virtue points available to us when we make things difficult for ourselves. Yeah.
Thank you. I did a lot with physical tension, body, especially maybe in meditation, going on all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't really understood it yet, but what I'm thinking at the moment is that it seems as if I'm using subconsciously physical tension to block out feeling, so that instead of knowing feeling or emotion, the body tenses up to block it out.
Yep.
And if I try to sort of put my attention to it, the mind sort of formulate it, it either just like was blank, or I'm just thinking about, work, this thing.
Yeah. It's just distraction.
Yeah, I'm avoiding it, and to the point I don't really know. I don't know what I'm avoiding.
Right.
I don't even know that I'm avoiding it.
Yep.
This is an idea. I don't know. That sounds like a reasonable thing to look into, and if you have any suggestions about what I can do to work with it.
Well, I think that's where, using the body as an anchor for the mindfulness and the meditation is really, really helpful, because you're getting this immediate feedback of stress and tension, so that being able to very consciously use the sensations in the body, the experience of the body, to go through and to just soften, just whatever, and you experimenting with you don't have to think any further of understanding nature of mind and blah, blah, blah. It's, how do I sit and not be tense? How can I breathe into that area of the body, say, starting around my eyes, around my jaw, where I'm clenching, or I'm holding tight, forehead, or trying to concentrate the mind. This is often, even the language we use with meditation, so trying to concentrate the mind. We put so much effort into that it's a source of tension. And, I think it's a terrible translation of the word samadhi is concentration. I mean, it's hard to find an alternative now because it's in the lexicon. But it's I'd really question it. Because even the literal translation of the word concentrate, means to make small. You can, like, if you concentrate some fluid, it's to make it, boil it down and get it thicker and make it smaller. Concentrate, you contract it. And so it's making it small. And the reality of the mind that's peaceful and clear is it's very spacious and comfortable. So that the body is a good place to start. And it really is an appropriate foundation to start at and keep returning to as you continue your practice, because you get an immediate kind of printout of the am I comfortable? Am I happy? Am I peaceful? Am I settled? Because then you can feel either kind of a restlessness or a tightening or a contraction, and just very, very consciously, that's all you need to do really in the meditation is just pay attention. How do I using the breath is, I think, very helpful. As breathing into areas of the body, like into the shoulders, where oftentimes there's tension. I mean, anywhere in the body, but you can start from the top of the head and just sort of slowly work down, and just breathing in and then just consciously relaxing, breathing out and letting it soften. Breathing in and moving it down, going through the chest and the abdomen, going down, just really letting between the shoulder blades, so the posture opens up, down the lower back, where you're sort of feeling settled into the body, and down into the legs, and so and just releasing tension. It's a breathing in. I mean, you can play with it in so many different. Breathing in and then sort of breathing out, washing it out through your toes, or just any number of experiments you could. But whatever sort of starts to click or feel that it makes sense, there can be a basis of that relaxing. And then mindfulness starts to be quite natural. It's happy to settle, to stay, to linger around there, because it feels good. And then to go back up and go through it again. It's just this a conscious way of using mindfulness, and particularly mindfulness of breathing, because it's not just, say, physical breath that you're paying attention to. Like in Pali, it's anapana is in breath, out breath. In Sanskrit, it's prana. And that's a bit more explicit in terms of breath energy. And so that's really what even in the Pali, what you're looking to is you're not just trying to pay attention to the physical manifestation of molecules of air coming in and going out. It's sort of, what's the energetics of the mind and the body right now? How do I use the breath to modulate and soften and relax, or energize and invigor? Any number of it's that breath energy that you're working with. So mindfulness of breathing and attention to the body is a really important anchor for that. And you find yourself being able to, the body softens and relaxes, and you can inhabit the body. It doesn't become some kind of obstruction or enemy to one's well-being. It's sort of, okay, here I am in this mind and this body. Yeah.
You've been explaining all sorts of terms in Pali and getting into the subtleties of the language. And I was just wondering, throughout your bhikkhu life, how did you get to study and get to the in-depth of the syntax and actually language when it comes to Pali?
Osmosis. I am definitely not a Pali scholar, not a Pali student even. But yeah, after 52 years of being a monk, you absorb a lot, and you take an interest. What does that mean? How does that work? Fortunately, I've got a window into the Pali through both the English and the Thai. And so that, to me, that was helpful. And so I had two languages, And I'm kind of lazy, so 3 seemed a lot. But, there are these, quite critical terms that are part and parcel of the description of the teaching and the path of practice that are you sort of realize, this is, I got to pay attention. What's that mean? And what's the root of that word? How's that? And in some places there's good books that point stuff that out, but it's in the end I wouldn't be able to say exactly where I got it. It's as osmosis. I just sort of absorbed it over the years and out of interest.
So for the second noble truth, samudaya,
yes,
do you know it as arising of suffering, or is it origin of suffering, or does it matter how we?
Yeah, I would say origin is probably a good translation, but it's either or is fine. Sort of okay. What's the starting point? Where does it start? What's the beginning point? Where does it come from? What's its root? And then you start. Yeah, and then the description that the Buddha gives of that tatra binandini, the ever seeking fresh delight, now here, now there. That's the origin of suffering. So there's how do I get out of this present moment and get to something else so I'll finally be happy and comfortable. And of course we carry the same desire with us all the time. So we're ever seeking fresh delight.
The Buddha is often described to have this quality of fearlessness.
Yes.
How can we understand what is fearlessness?
Well, when to me, I would say what the core of fearlessness is not having a self, an I, a me, a mine that it's trying to protect. So that the heart of fearlessness is not in some state of courage or bravado. It's sort of, you realize there's nothing to prop up, nothing to protect. That you're not missing out on anything. Well, you're missing out on dukkha, but it's that sense of, because fear is always coming from the quality of this is me, this is mine, this is what I am, this is how I think should be, this is what shouldn't be. What happens if it's like this? Oh dear, it could be like that. And that's all from the self-position. And when that self-position is seen through, then everything fits. You can be comfortable with whatever. And that's not complacent. It's just seeing through things in a way where one is not interested in adding suffering to the mix.
Another question?
Yeah.
I was wondering if you could say something about the independent origination. There's a step called name and form.
Yes.
And it's difficult for me to understand what that refers to. You could say something about it.
Another easy way of just name and form, mind and body. There's this, this sense of subject-object, mind and body, name and form. Name and form is a bit abstract, but mind and body is a bit more concrete. Subject-object is sort of kind of in between, but it is that division of me in here looking out there. But, we don't have an existence, because like a disembodied mind is not a human existence. So that the whole experience of life, really, except on the most, say, refined, non-material Brahma realms, which is, that's almost off the scale of experience, but it is dependent on having a physical body of some sort and a mind of some sort, whether it's an animal existence or even a celestial existence. There's still a fine material body and identification with that. And certainly in the human realm, which we all experience, and it relies on both, so that they both are, and both follow the same kind of patterns and laws of existence. So that being able to, one can understand the nature of mind through the experience of body. One can understand the nature of body through the experience of mind. They're mirroring each other so often. So being able to recognize that they're dependent on each other. There's a sutta where somebody's asking the Buddha about the experience of one or other of the five khandhas and referring to it as almost as a standalone sort of feature. And the Buddha said, no, these are conjoined, they're not disjoined. So, they all come together. And so that, one will be more prevalent just because of the nature of experience. You've got to make some choices, or the choices sort of made in terms of impingement, but it's all of a piece. Yeah.
Excuse me. How do we recognise when we're being taken advantage of, when we're trying to offer compassion? And how do we draw a line to maintain our compassion without it impeding? Yeah,
it's a good question, because sometimes the barriers are pretty uncertain and permeable, and sometimes you have to there's a conscious choice of, okay, this person isn't that sensitive, but still the option or the more agreeable option is to be compassionate rather than just shutting somebody out completely. Mm-hmm. But so it has to be conscious. I think that's one of the things is just making it very and recognizing, okay, what can I? And there's always got to be a point where you're going to be willing to cut your losses. and so, okay, I've been trying this compassion business, and they're not responding, or they're responding in really insensitive ways and taking advantage, or expecting. But I don't think there's a hard and fast rule. I think you have to pay attention. Are they? Because also one is, am I exercising compassion wisely? Sometimes you try to be compassionate as out of the textbooks, and then realize, oh, that was wildly, in retrospect, that was wildly idealistic and bound for disaster. And so the wisdom always has to play a role. There's three qualities that are pointed to so particularly in Theravada Buddhism, that always need to be questioning and trying to, how do we get that balance? And wisdom, purity, and compassion. And they have to work together. So in the sense of purity, not in the sense of like a Christian sense of being somehow magically pure, but purity in the sense of unselfish, so that there is a lack of, or a diminishing of our self-agenda and our particular greed or wish for people to conform to or to change because we're being compassionate to them. So that element of purity is there. The element of wisdom, of discerning, discernment and seeing clearly what actually is a wise strategy in this situation. So it's nothing absolutely hard and fast and straightforward. And what is a kind and compassionate response to this? Because sometimes, like Ajahn Chah was incredibly compassionate, but, he could be pretty tough sometimes. But I never felt that it wasn't without compassion. So that sometimes not doing something and not indulging somebody, it can be the most compassionate thing to do. So a lot of it comes from experience. Again, that reflection and reviewing, what's working. Because that's the Buddhist teachings always have to, they always have a practical goal. I think the Buddha says so many times I teach only two things, suffering and the ending of suffering. So that's recognizing where the suffering lies or where it's coming from, and what can I do to help affect that ending of suffering, whether it's personally or with others. And so that sense of compassion is coming from a good place. And that's also like when we reflect or recollect the qualities of the Buddha, that's what we say when we pay respects at the beginning of pujas or the ending of pujas. It's recollecting those qualities. Arahant Samma Sambuddho Bhagava. Those are pointing to the qualities of wisdom, compassion, purity. Arahant is free from defilement. How do we translate it? Noble or something? Can't remember. But anyway, that's the Arahant is sort of like free from defilement. So it's like there's purity there. Samma Sambuddho is fully awakened on his own, so it's a quality of wisdom. Bhagava is the blessed one, or the one who brings blessing, so it's compassion. And we're constantly reminding ourselves, those are the integral qualities that we are. Those are qualities of the Buddha, but they're also qualities that the Buddha has manifested for us to plug into and emulate and use as tools for our own practice and development. So compassion on its own is, it has to be sort of highlighted by these other qualities and then seeing what's actually going to work. Because that wish to alleviate suffering is the heart of compassion, that wish to alleviate the suffering, to be able to bring well-being into the world. Is you want to help people. But then, sometimes people are wonderfully oblivious to their own good and the well-being of others around them. I remember just a few days ago receiving people after the meal at Amaravati and talking to somebody who was, asking questions. How do I deal with it? How do I deal with this situation? And so I gave a response. And then she asked the same question in a different way. Again, I said, okay, I'll answer it like this. And how do I? And she did that about 4 times. And finally I said, she started to ask again. And I said, have you listened to anything I've said? So sometimes, I thought it was being compassionate, but it might not have been so nice. Fortunately, she took it well. Yeah.
Or I have a question about Sampajanya.
Yes.
If I remember correctly, Lumpus Meadow one day coined Sati Sampajanya as intuitive awareness.
Yes.
So then I got the sense of intuition.
Yes.
But when I look up the 4 practice quality of Sampajanya, purpose, and suitability, and territory, and
time and place.
Yes. And contemplating those aspects, like checking the purpose, like, okay, what's the goal? Why I'm doing this? Yeah. I feel like my mind gets thinking mind arises and more logical. Mm-hmm. And then the suitability, is it suitable? Yes or no? It could be intuitive, but also. And then the territory, theme, price, it's also kind of, I can see if I train this again and again, the thinking mind more subside and more I can work intuitively.
Hopefully.
but my point is, so Sampajanya, yes, if it's intuitive, it's wonderful, but to cultivate that quality, I think a lot logically.
Yeah, and I think one of the things is, Lumpur Sumedho is trying to express his experience, and you have to, and the words are never quite going to get there. So they're pointers. So that intuitive awareness is a pointer as opposed to a definitive description. So, in the same way that I wouldn't try to analyze it or to even define it too tightly but pay attention to the experience. And then sampajanya is it's an aspect of mindfulness. And I think to me, the best or most interesting translation that I've come across in these latter years is Bhante Sujato's translation as situational awareness, which is its function is to discern the situations and the situation can be external, but the situation, as you're sitting meditation, what's going on in my own mind? And when, say, Ajahn Jeff translates Sampajanya, he translates it as alert, which is, he doesn't go into a long explanation. And so I think it's helpful to take these different descriptions and definitions and try to see, they're like patchwork, trying to get a picture. Yeah, there's different patchworks. They're like a mosaic, and that's trying to get a picture. So there are different translations or different ways of approaching, and so trying to get the feel for that. Because the old translation of clear comprehension is, they're all valid in a certain way, but we've got to try to come up with, a language that we translate our experience into that language or as pointers. Lopa Sumero's own intuitive awareness, I feel, is he's using Sati Sampajanya, but it's also he's pointing to something that is a bit bigger picture. So that, those are all, again, they're tools for trying to give us a window onto the mind that creates suffering and has the capacity of freeing itself from suffering.
Well,
yes.
I have a question regarding being of service to others. And
pardon?
Sorry, I have a question about being of service to others.
Yes.
Specifically when they're opening up about issues or something difficult that they're dealing with.
Yep.
And knowing when to just listen.
Yep.
And knowing when to step in and maybe offer something.
Mm-hmm. And what was the last bit?
Knowing when to maybe say something to, to offer something that might be able to help them.
Right. Oh, right.
Just, how to kind of, sensing into what's needed.
Yeah, it's, a lot of it comes through experience. And a lot of it is clarifying intention in the mind. So that whether it's clarifying the intention to want to say something to help, to be of service to others in some positive way, or similarly, just that sense of, asking for help or being open to receiving feedback or whatnot. So those are, I think part of it is, just part of, as we start to practice more, the Buddha put tremendous emphasis on the association with good people. And so that part of that is starting to get a feeling of, one, through our own commitment to practice and to integrity, then the association with other people who share that same commitment, and then there's an increased bond of trust that is there. But without that foundation of trust, it's kind of difficult to be comfortable, or certainly that's how I would feel. So a lot of it is paying attention to the one's own commitment to integrity, and this part of service is of loving kindness, just being kind to other people, and then getting a feel for how others are, and over time because there's always a hump of one's own feeling of self and self-consciousness that one has to get up over. And sometimes one does that, and you have a positive reinforcing experience, and sometimes not. And so it's just as over time, you just have to sort of fine-tune that willingness and skill in how we respond to others, how we reach out to others, but always wanting to both to be in the presence of people who are good spiritual friends, but then also trying to be a good spiritual friend to others, so that those bonds of mutual aspiration are really, really important. And you get a sense of trust. And even if sometimes it's a bit clumsy and awkward, but there can be a sense of trust there. And then with others, it's just not there. So you just have to be content and either waiting for the right opportunity or content with building a foundation. But yeah, it definitely takes time. And I think just the nature of self and self-consciousness, it takes some time to grow beyond our own fears, really.
I think there can be this sense of wanting to fix someone.
Yes.
As well, like if they're having a problem,
yeah,
and you feel like you've really got some kind of answer that's going to fix them.
Yes. Usually a bad idea. But that said, that's one of the, say, parameters for giving feedback to others is asking permission. So that actually getting permission from somebody to, it's actually sort of sharing. I've got this perspective that I would like to share with you on this particular thing. Would you be open to that? And so one is getting their permission. And sometimes people say, no, I'm not ready for it. And then that makes it very clear. And then even if you do get permission, it's really choosing the right time. Also, it's paying attention to one's intention, because sometimes it's we can be so keen on fixing them that we overlook our own skillfulness because of our rightness. And I say, as a young abbot, I did that many times. It doesn't land very well. Or also just choosing the right time and circumstance is really important for somebody to be a bit more open. It's like Ajahn Chah always used to say that, if you've got something to bring up with another monk and, or some feedback or admonishment to give, do not do it before the meal. It's bad timing. It doesn't matter how right it is. The chances are it's never going to land.
For the practice of patience, how does it fit into the Eightfold Path?
Every single split, every single step along the way.
And they say patience is like the incinerator of defilement.
Yes.
How does it explain that? I don't quite know.
Well, I think one is sort of recognizing, again, sort of thinking in terms of what's the Buddha pointing to with patience? Because in the English language, when we speak of patience, oftentimes it's, just be patient. What it means is just put up with something unpleasant until it's over. Which is, I think, so that's not such a great, because like patience in terms of a quality, the Buddha, he calls it a barami. This is one of the baramis, this Kanti barami. So that a barami is a transforming virtue. So there's something uplifting and beautiful to it. So to me, like patience is the willingness to be present with what we're experiencing, whether it's pleasant or unpleasant. So that willingness to be present. And of course there's the patience to deal with uncomfortable situations, but there's the presence to be like with the mind, so that you're able to recognize the movement of mind or the impulses of self and self-establishing, trying to establish itself on real subtle levels of mind. And there's it's one of the qualities that the Buddha points to as integral to realization. It's just having the patience to be with the mind as it is. I can't remember the Pali term for that. There's specific Pali term that the Buddha uses, using patience, and it sort of says a doorway into awakening. So it's that patience of dealing with discomfort, like being patient when we don't get what we want, or we get what we don't want, being able to be having that enduring mind that isn't easily shaken. So that's a good, another, in terms of description of patience or Kanti, it's sort of, like an enduring mind that is not easily shaken by whatever worldly winds there are, whether it's praise and blame, gain and loss, all the various 8 worldly winds. So that mind, there's a clarity and stability there. It's because of patience. So it's a doorway into very beautiful states of mind. But yeah, absolutely necessary in all levels of the path.
Paul, I also have a question. That's regarding, sometimes we hear that with practice, some qualities change.
Mm-hmm.
Some qualities doesn't really change very much over a long time of practice. I was wondering how to know or recognize the difference. Sometimes, at least when I read certain biographies and things, it seems like certain quite rough qualities can still remain even though the mind is pure.
Yeah.
So how to know the difference, one in oneself, but also in others?
Well, a lot of it's always around the element of suffering. So that, I think, always a good example is Lukta Mahabua, who always referred to himself as a rough character. And so that really, he was certainly capable of incredible refinement and was an inspiring role model but there were those elements of kind of roughness there that were residual. So the residual areas of character. But one of the things that I didn't start meeting Lungta Mahabua until it would be in the 1980s, and I met her over the years because I wasn't close to him. There's quite a physical distance. I probably met him about half a dozen times over the years, and I never ever, some people were really afraid of him because of his bluntness and his wrong. I never ever felt any kind of. I always felt really warm around him, and that his kind of bluster was kind of personality, but wasn't a whole lot. It wasn't heat there or attraction there. It's just sort of display. It was his personality displaying itself. Whereas the other teacher, different types of personality are, our characters sort of display themselves in different ways. I think of, there's say, Lumpute. I got to pay respects to him a couple times, and both physically and presence-wise, he's just got this incredible Deva-like quality, refined Deva presence, soft, gentle, very inspiring. But yeah, not a rough bone in his body. Lumpur Dun, incredibly quiet and just still. Everything was very still around him. So there's certain elements, and you realize, that's a result. Part of it's a result of many years and decades of their practice and training, but part of it is also a certain character that they've inherited. And so Ajahn Chah was, a bit more mercurial, very charismatic, very kind of gregarious even, able to draw people in. And so his capacity was quite different. So yeah, there's some element, and some elements of, there's certain, but what is missing is dukkha, and some of these great beings. So, when we practice, we want to really, again, it's just like paying attention to what elements of greed, hatred, and delusion am I still functioning with? What elements of those 5 hindrances are still displaying themselves, and work at that relinquishment. And then something very beautiful will come out of that. But there's certain elements of our character are always going to and a substrate that will be there. And they say that in the only person who was really capable of completely changing their whole character was the Buddha, whereas all the rest of the arahants were able to free their minds, but they all had different personalities. There's beautiful suttas in it's in the Majjhima Nikaya, I think in one of the Kasinga, Mahakusinga, where they're all kind of gathering together around these different arahants, and they're the Vinaya monks are going around Upali, and the Sutta monks are going around Ananda, and the meditators, the kind of psychic power wallas are crack meditators are going around Mahamoggallana, and the wisdom analysis people are going around Sariputta. There's different characters, and they're all liberated arahants, but their particular kind of display of character and personality are there. But it's always is you're paying attention to that relinquishment of greed, hatred, and delusion, relinquishing of the 5 hindrances. I find are really, really important windows or mirrors for substantiating how is greed, hatred, and delusion manifesting itself.
Excuse me. How do we? Is it ever acceptable to put a life out of suffering, knowing that, let's say, for example, it's dying and it's suffering slowly? Is it ever acceptable? Let's say, in my example, I'm going to use, I see a doe being hit by a car.
Right.
It was not in a good condition.
Yeah.
The farmers just wanted to put a shotgun to it.
Yeah.
Put it out of suffering. Is that acceptable?
Well, we don't usually have shotguns.
No.
So it helps. Helps. I mean, I think one of the things is life, really wants to live. Even the simplest forms, and you're being bit by a mosquito, and you sort of pick it up by the hind legs, and it just struggles. It wants to get away. It wants to live. It's not, squash me now sort of thing. It wants to live. And certainly because sometimes like being able to look after an animal or a human being until they naturally expire is an incredible gift to them, because then there's an element of being able to integrate the reality of their impending death. And that's being able, and it takes a while to be able to get one's own mind around the fact that, okay, I'm dying, any being. So that the willingness to care for someone even when they are suffering, and because usually what the motivation is not so much I want to help them out of their suffering, it's sort of like, God, that suffering is really disturbing, but how can I help that being? I remember one time being out at a branch monastery, out at Dauda, and they had this big Brahma bull who kept coming around our monastery, and it didn't live there, and we were worried about it because the tigers were there around, so that we didn't want it to. It should have been with its herd. And for some reason, it kept coming over. So they ended up making a little corral, and sure enough, a female tiger and her cub, because we could see the tracks after, scared it out of the corral. It broke out of the corral. I mean, it's like big. I mean, it was really big. And it just ran it down. Tiger ran it down and then attacked it. And some hunters were coming along at the same time. So they shot at the tiger. The tigers left. But this big bull and it belonged to the next kind of little village over. We knew the owners, and so we went and looked after it. And we just looked after it until it died. And you could just see it get increasingly peaceful. And, whereas at the beginning it's just been attacked by a tiger. It's not in its calmest state of mind. And so just, so rather than sort of, this poor dumb animal needs to be put out of its misery, it's sort of, looking after it. So we looked after it and cared for it, and then it died naturally. So that you know, it's a gift to even an animal, and certainly to a human being. You see that with, we say, with dogs and cats, because there's bonds between those, the owners, and when the owner really looks after, and it's a real gift to that animal. But it is uncomfortable, because you know, human beings, any kind of physical form, and they're messy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Namayang Dhamakataya Sadhu Karang Tadamase